Welcome to the Spy Collection Digital Edition, where we are looking at spy artifacts that only exist in digital format. My name is Anastasios, and this time we will have a look at a very recent cyber espionage operation attributed to an actor dubbed as Sidewinder, who has been previously associated with India's intelligence apparatus. India and Sri Lanka are two neighboring countries that, in general, have good relations with each other. Of course, there are some tensions from time to time, but in most cases their people, governments and militaries don't have any significant disputes. This makes this case very interesting since Sidewinder conducted a cyber espionage operation targeting officials and retired officials of Sri Lanka's Navy in August to September 2022. Now on Sidewinder, depending on the organization, you'll find different aliases such as those listed here. We cannot be absolutely certain that they refer to the exact same entity since each intelligence organization tracks them in a slightly different way. However, they all have significant overlaps, meaning that it's very likely that all of them refer to the same actor. Sidewinder has been conducting such activities for over a decade, with their main espionage target being militaries and government entities, with a very strong focus on naval entities of Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and other nation-states near India. With the publicly available information we have today, we can only assess that Sidewinder is part of India's intelligence services. There are indications that it's closer aligned with India's DIA and naval intelligence, that is based on their targeting over the years, but India has a large intelligence community, so we cannot be more specific about it. Maybe in the future we will be able to attribute this to a more specific entity. On the operation itself, it all started by sending a Microsoft Word document to the targets. That was retired and active duty officers of Sri Lanka's Navy. The document was titled pensionersform.docx, and if opened, it contained the 3 pages that you see here. This gives us an even better idea of the targets. It was pretending to originate from Sri Lanka's Department of Pensions and was targeting all officers in foreign missions, divisional secretaries, and bank managers for payment of pensions to Sri Lankan pensioners. You can pause the video if you'd like to read the lure document. At the same time that this document was displayed, covertly it was doing something different. It was running this command. This was a CNE technique used around that time by advanced actors to deploy software implants on their targets. In summary, it's using Windows' built-in RunDLL32 to load a Windows library called DAV-client or DAV-clnt.dll, and from there execute a function called DAV-setCookie, which allows it to connect to a remote system. In this case, connect to Sri Lanka-navy.l4vk.com using SSL encryption, and fetch the file that you see in the last part of it. Before we dive deeper into how this file was covertly installing and executing the cyber espionage software, let's have a look at the server it was connecting to. This was a VPS from a well-known provider, and it was operational for just 45 days, from August 17th to October 1st, 2022. What is equally interesting is what other subdomains were registered in this VPS at the same time. The last two especially look quite unusual. If you know what those might have been impersonating, please let us know in the comments below. Later on, that same server was also used by Sidewinder to target Nepal's Navy, but we can look into that in a separate episode. Back to our analysis, we are at this stage. Let's understand how a Microsoft Word document was able to invoke and execute an external file. That shouldn't be possible, right? In April 2022, Mandiant cybersecurity firm identified a cyber espionage actor exploiting this flaw in Microsoft Word, which up to that point was unknown. That was a zero-day exploitation. Of course, Microsoft developed a patch for it and released it later in 2022. Specifically, it was given the unique identifier CVE 2017-0199. However, anyone that hadn't updated their Microsoft Word was still vulnerable to this CNE capability. Due to a design flaw in Microsoft Word, exploit developers could add an OLE2 embedded link object in the document, triggering the download of the configured file. The downloaded file appeared like an RTF file, but it wasn't. It was an HTA file disguised as RTF. Due to a logic flaw in the handler of HTA files in Microsoft Word, it was loading and executing them as legitimate applications, not opening them up as documents, thus allowing an operator to covertly download and execute anything they wanted as long as their target opened the original Word document. No other user interaction was required. That means the complete flow was more like this. Unfortunately, we have been unable to discover and analyze the software implant that was deployed in this operation, and we didn't find any research around it either. This means that its details are still unknown. In most cases, those provide complete covert control of the compromised system, but we have no specific details for this particular cyber espionage operation. It's very hard to conclusively identify the motivation behind this. What we can confidently state is that between August and September 2022, India's intelligence services targeted Sri Lanka's Navy personnel for cyber espionage purposes. The main focus was likely foreign missions, as well as that similar operations were used to target the Nepalese and Pakistani Navy by the same actor. And finally, we don't know the motivation behind this operation. It could be anything from counterintelligence to standing intelligence requirements or anything else in between. What we know is that historically India and Sri Lanka have regular disputes, including arrests from both sides related to fishing activities between the two countries, as well as India's intelligence service, specifically RAW, had tried in the past to interfere with Sri Lanka's internal politics. For instance, in 2015, Sri Lanka expelled a RAW clandestine officer involved in elections interference, and in 2018, the Sri Lankan president stated that there was an assassination attempt by RAW. Lastly, and probably the most prominent threat around the time of this operation, was the continuous expansion efforts of Chinese involvement in the area through a wide variety of overt and covert means. Of course, we don't know what was the real reason behind this. Nevertheless, we saw how modern cyber espionage looks like for some nation states that we unfortunately not frequently hear about. We saw how just opening a Word document could lead to complete compromise of a nation's security, making us all think that nothing is as it seems.